Hello, everyone. Welcome to a higher dimension. I'm Gloria Danvers from Gloria Danvers Hypnosis, and I'm your host for this podcast. One of the many reasons I love doing this podcast is because I get to examine what is happening beneath a seemingly ordinary human life in a seemingly ordinary world. A world which is not a world, but a universe. And a human life which is not a human life, but a spirit life. And I get to share it with you. I may talk about things that you've always thought about, but never spoken, or completely new ideas that open up a whole new universe. And in either case, I love to share, and I love getting your feedback. So today, I'm going to talk about the self. What the self is, and what it is not. How much of this self do we come in with when we're incarnated? And when we leave this world and return to spirit, how much of our earthly self returns with us? When I die, what exactly is the I that is internal? And how much of that I was taken on to meet the challenges of a particular incarnation? Because when people talk about seeing a loved one in the afterlife, or an experience in a dream, they often describe them as still being recognizably themselves. Not just a neutral ball of light. There is a recognition of the relationship, a familiarity, the same feelings, the same energy that they had when they were in their human lives. A lot of people who have had near-death experiences and end-of-life visions and after-death communications report descriptions of recognizable deceased people. And although they may be recognized as themselves, how much of their selves in this lifetime did they leave behind? And what are we really looking at when we have these near-death experiences or visitations or communications? I'm going to give you a personal example. I had a difficult father. I loved him very much, but I'd be lying if I said he wasn't sometimes mean and deliberately cruel. My father, in this incarnation, as I knew him, was an angry person. But after his death, when I spoke to him in my dreams and had visitations, he was kind and understanding and loving and helpful. He became the loving voice in my mind. Whereas before, when he was alive, he was the critical voice. So although his human form and his voice remained the same, the cruel person that he was left behind. Now, I believe that this is the true essence of him as spirit. Which takes me to the next question. What did he come in to experience? Was it anger? I don't think so. Maybe anger was what happened to the spirit once it passed through a human life. Underneath, there could have been strength and intensity, pride and independence, and a need to be in control of his own life. Not in themselves negative traits. There was potential there for experiential growth. So, maybe those qualities belong to the soul, but in the circumstances of this particular incarnation, they became distorted. His strength became hardness, and his pride became cruelty. And whatever love there was there became very difficult for him to express. So maybe the soul signature and the human personality are not the same thing. Maybe the human personality is what happens when the soul's basic nature meets a body, has a family, lives in a culture, is wounded, becomes fearful, and makes choices under certain circumstances. And then another question. What did he learn about those original qualities by living them in that form? Did he learn what strength becomes without tenderness, and what pride becomes without self-awareness? Did he learn what love becomes when it is felt but not expressed? And did he take that understanding back with him? I don't know. Maybe we come in carrying something of the soul, and when we leave, we take something of the person back with us. For example, maybe his soul signature was strength, intensity, independence, protectiveness, pride, and a deep need to have agency. If you put those qualities into a difficult human life, and then you add wounds, fear, disappointment, and the inability to be vulnerable, that strength hardens into control. Protectiveness becomes possessiveness. Pride can become cruelty, and intensity can become anger. So maybe the soul doesn't choose anger because it wants to be angry. Maybe a soul with a strong, forceful signature chooses a life where that energy will be tested. And this is the essence of the soul self that he brought in with him. So then, maybe what he left behind was the anger and the cruelty and the defensiveness and all the human damage that shaped the way he expressed himself. What he took with him may have been the deeper essence beneath all of that. His strength, his intensity, his capacity to love, and a new understanding that came from living a life where those qualities were sometimes distorted. Maybe the soul carries forward not the behavior itself, but what it learned by living through it. So in our afterlife visitations, what I'm seeing and experiencing and communicating with is the soul essence of my father and his energetic signature without the behaviors and attitudes that shaped his early life. Is this what the soul is? A repository of lessons learned within a particular signature pattern? Is the soul both a continuing pattern of consciousness and the accumulated essence of what that consciousness has experienced? No, it's not just a filing cabinet full of lessons, but something much more than that. A distinct energetic signature that keeps meeting experiences, being changed by them and deepened by them, and then carrying forward what has become real through living. So possibly the soul is an individual pattern within greater consciousness, carrying its own nature and the distilled wisdom of what it has lived. The personality may change from life to life. The circumstances certainly do. But the deeper pattern remains, gathers experience, and evolves. And maybe that's why some qualities feel so fundamental in people. They may not all have been built in this lifetime. Some could belong to the longer continuity of the soul itself through experience of being that particular person, with their strengths, their successes, their failures, the love that they could express, and the love that they could not, may now be held within a much larger understanding than they were capable of while living it. So my dad didn't disappear. My dad became part of a larger self that remembers being Richard, understands Richard, loves through Richard's experiences, and could still be present as the recognizable Richard, my dad, when the relationship I have now with him as his soul self calls for that familiar expression. And without the personality traits like the anger and the meanness, those are what he chose to leave behind. And maybe that's what we're all doing here, adding something to our higher consciousness that did not exist in quite the same way before we lived it. Not collecting lessons like grades in school, but giving our soul the experience of being this one particular person in this one particular life. Perhaps nothing genuine is lost. It's absorbed, understood, and added to the larger self that we've been becoming all along. And this is the part where the question becomes personal for each of us. What is your self? What did you come in with? And what did you accumulate that enhanced or distorted the original self? What feels natural in the way that you live, and what feels forced or wrong? Look at that, not with a critical eye, but like an artist who recognizes the medium they are creating with and continually pushes the boundaries, but always retains the same flow. Each of us comes into this life with a soul self, and I believe each soul carries its own energetic signature. Yes, we're still part of the larger consciousness of spirit, but that doesn't mean that we're identical and interchangeable. There is something individual in the soul, a way of being, sets of tendencies, strengths, attractions, and maybe even certain kinds of experiences that draw us to them. Then there is the physical self we become here. And that self is shaped not only by what we came in with, but with our cultural, religious, familial, and yes, our choices. And this is what creates the people that we become through living. So every incarnation may make us more ourselves, but in a way that is much larger than the personality that we recognize in the mirror. So I think the key idea here is that the soul self and the human self are not separate strangers. The human self is an expression of the soul, but also an addition to it. We are not simply repeating the same self over and over. A more complex expression of the signature of the souls we've been all along. And our intention is to leave each lifetime having added something real to the soul that came here in the first place. So thanks for being here with me today. If this podcast resonates with you, please share it with someone that you think would enjoy it. If you're intrigued by the work that I'm doing, you can go to gloriadanvershypnosis.com and book a free consultation. I'd love to talk to you about a life that we can create that balances you spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So I'll catch you in 2 weeks with a new podcast that will take you down another very splendid rabbit hole. Until then, bye.